Okay, in lesson 6, random numbers, we learned how to use the random number tool to generate random numbers. This starts allowing us to have unique programs each time we run it, so not everything is going to be exactly the same every time we run it. Previously, we used fixed or constant numbers to assign any values. Today, we're going to, like I said, we're going to talk about using random numbers to make the programs unique each time we run it. So we're going to take a look at Bubble 6, which is the practice, and we're going to look at A, modifying the planets. Here we have 6 planets represented by circles. We have a black background. So what we're going to be asked to do is make the planets random sizes, so it's always changing, and also randomize the positions a little bit. I'm going to look at the first. Actually, no, let's look at the second circle. That way we fully see it. And the second planet or circle is the salmon one. Since we have the positions already, the X and Y positions, let's change that first. And let's randomize it first. We could type it in, but we can also drag in the values. It's a little tough to, you have to get exact. You see how the yellow is over the 80? So once I do that, it creates a random number between, now it's between 1 and 10. Before is at 80, so I'm going to just slightly change it. I'm going to make it random between 70 and 90. That way it's still around the original location. Each time I run it, you can see that it slightly moves the planet to the left or right. For the Y position, I'm going to make it more drastic. I'm going to also just type it in this time, and we're going to make it between, it's at 200 now, so we'll make it between maybe 100 and 300. Okay, so you'll notice that vertically, it also shifts a lot, higher and lower. Okay, and so we could go ahead and do that for each one. For instance, the cyan one, again, it's originally at 160. I don't want to move it too much, so I'm going to maybe make it between a random number between 150 and 170. And the height, I could leave random number between 100 and 300. Okay. Without opening a new can of worms, a programmer might notice that the y-axis, we're continue to use random number 100 and 300. We can actually start using a variable for that. And we could call it random height. And we could say it's a random, let me actually just use the tool so we get accustomed to that. We could say it's a random number between 100 and 300. So rather than doing this each time, I can actually just use the variable. Oops, I guess I have to type it. I can use the variable random height. Okay. Okay, and same with this. Instead of using this, I can use the variable random height. Okay, so that was the randomizing the positions. I'm not going to do all the planets. It's the same idea to continue. Now the random sizes. Okay, so we know to add the sizes of the ellipse and the rectangles, we add the parameters by clicking on the arrow. So this is going to add the width, and the next one adds the height. We want them to be a random number. By default, I believe it's at, I don't even know, let's see, between 140 and 180, so around 140-ish diameter. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a random number for the width and height. And let's just say, I don't know, between 25 and 75. And I'm going to make a mistake at first so we could kind of demonstrate this, and this is going to be the same thing, random number. Oops. This is why I like typing, it's a little faster for me. Between 25 and 75. And this is only for the salmon. If we take a look at this and randomize it, we're going to notice that, hey, it's no longer a circle. And you might have already noticed the reason for that is because we're generating a random number for the width and then a separate random number for the height. So to alleviate this problem and allow it to be random, but also allow it to be the same, keep it as a circle, we're going to actually use a variable. We're going to use the variable tool. We're going to call this variable random size. Okay, and I'm going to call it a random number between 25 and 75. So rather than using this, we're going to use the variables. Random size, and now the salmon planet, it changes sizes, but it's always going to be a circle. Okay, and so we might think, okay, well then for the next one, for the sign, we're going to use random size, and then random size. And at first it looks like it works, but once we play it a few times, you might have noticed now it's the same size each time. So to fix that problem, what we're probably going to want to do is, for each planet or each circle, we're going to have to create a variable for it. So instead of saying random size, I'll use salmon size. And then for the cyan, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it cyan size. And same thing, random number between 25 and 75. Okay, so I'm going to change this. Cyan size. And you know, we only did 2 of the planets, but now 2 of the planets are completely randomized. Okay, it'll be the same idea once we process the rest of them. So I'm going to move on. We're going to look at debugging this program, random shape position. Okay, yeah, it's by default. So right now in the program, each rectangle has its own random position. Can you make it so the rectangles are all stacked on top of each other, but the entire stack is randomly positioned? So if you noticed the GIF on the right side here, the rectangles stay a rectangle, like all 3 colors, but the rectangle itself is randomly positioned. So let's see what we have as far as our program. When I run it, it looks like the X positions are all the different numbers. So we need to figure out a way to change that. Let's look at the code we have so far, or let's look at the directions. Run the program, we just did. Use the variable X position to draw the bottom 2 rectangles at the same X position as the top pink rectangle. In other words, make sure that the rectangle stays a full rectangle. Okay, so the variable is X position. It's a random number between 0 and 150. So we know that that's the X position randomized number. The first, I guess, rectangle or shape is the pink one. It's going to be a rectangle. It's set at the X position is this random number, X position, between 0 and 150. Okay. And then the Y position, the size, we're not going to change that. The purple one, it's at random number, that's the X position. And the last one, fire brick, the red one, is also a random number. So why isn't this working when they're all random numbers? So if we take a minute to think about it, and this is similar to what we discussed in the previous problem, this is a very common mistake that I see as well, is we're creating a different random number each time for the X position pink, and then for purple it's going to create a different random number, and then for the red it's going to create a different random number. So rather than using the random number tool, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use X position for that one and X position for this one. Now for all 3 rectangles, we're creating the X position, I'm sorry, is going to be the same random number generated here. So every time I run it, the rectangle stays the same.